Hey everyone, we're back with our coverage of the Rapid World Chess Championship. I'm Ludvig. I'm joined by Irina Krush. This is the Rapid Recap, and today's best game is Magnus Carlsen playing against Alireza Firouzja in the most anticipated matchup of the day, the world number one against Alireza, who has climbed all the way to the number 2 spot. Magnus choosing to go with Bobby Fischer's favorite E4, and Alireza going for the Caro-Kann defense. Now, Magnus was very aggressive with his pawns early on, pushing them forward in the middle to put early pressure on Black's position. As the pieces got developed, we saw Alireza kind of maneuvering his bishop back so that he could make space for his knight, and when his knight got out, the bishop could join the party as well. And this was creating some threats in towards the white knight and the white king. Magnus defended, and very unusually, we saw the castled kings coming in somewhat later than normal after having had lots of central tension early on.
Yeah, and now came one of the key moments in the game when Alireza made this very nice attack on white center with the move f6, and we could totally feel the counterplay that Black was getting by challenging the center. Magnus responded with the move a3, giving Black a big choice about where to go with his bishop. Alireza made the right choice with bishop a5, and Magnus captured on d5, putting Alireza into another long think, because now both pawn captures are possible. But after thinking for a while, Alireza went for the more solid c takes d5. So he gave Magnus quite a lead on the clock in this game, a couple of these things. And there was a trade on f6, I believe right here. And we thought Black had quite an acceptable position around here. This looks like a French defense type of structure. Black's bishop is already developed on g6, where he usually aims to go in the French defense from c8 to g6. So overall, we thought Alireza was not doing badly, but there are some weaknesses in his pawn structure, like this e6 pawn. That's a big long-term weakness. And in the course of the game, Magnus manages to exploit that. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, the rook came in on the open file. Alireza making a trade between the knights on the right-hand side. The queen recapturing. Magnus taking the opportunity to push Alireza back, and actually this bishop went all the way home, a bit of a surprise for me, and as Magnus tried to exert even more pressure on this e6 pawn, Alireza just said, okay, we'll make some trades and I'll remain with this pawn on e6. Magnus used his queen to try and attack it, but as the knight went back, similarly to how the bishop went back, you would think that this is the kind of situation where, well, clearly Alireza is being played off the board. He's just being forced back with his pieces. But at the same time, Magnus has this problem with his bishop, that his bishop is being blocked by his own pawns. So the computers actually feel that this is a completely equal position, and that Black actually has perfectly acceptable chances. However,
I love Magnus's maneuver here. This was probably one of the best things in the game. This move, Magnus moving his knight instead of forwards, moving it backwards to d1 and maneuvering this knight to the key outpost square on e5. That's what you want to do when you're playing against a backwards pawn. You want to plant a knight in front of it. And I have to say, we did not notice this maneuver when we were looking at the game. We were thinking more about knight b5, but this knight move worked out great for Magnus.
So that was basically the maneuver that won him the game. Alireza moving his bishop back forward, putting pressure in towards the middle, but Magnus coming in with his knight, attacking the rook. The rook actually kind of got stuck on the king side. Alireza wanted to point it down towards the white king, but Magnus just utilized that opportunity to push his pieces forward, using his pawn here to push the rook. The rook tried to establish itself close to the white king, but Magnus just said, I got my king here. And if you're not careful now, if you do something silly, I'm going to go with my queen and attack both your rook. And if your rook moves, your queen is going to be lost behind it. Alireza actually felt forced to just retreat that rook immediately. But now Magnus continues his journey with the knight in towards the middle. And Alireza, once again, one of those backward moves, but this time it's one of desperation.
Yeah, one of my other favorite moves in this game is this A4 move that I believe it was played right here. Great move by Magnus. Like, look how he's playing on all sides of the board and how he's trying to fix this bishop on B2. That's his last remaining bad piece, trying to get it out on this A3 square. And by the way, later on in this game, that's going to be one of the last key moves that he's going to have to play, is to make that bishop better. And then everything about his position is going to be perfect. White has space on the queen side, really good control over the center. And black's pieces just are lacking coordination here. I mean, you can see the rooks are disconnected. The knight is, everyone is just defending. But, other than the bishop on C7, there's not really any attacking pieces for black. And black has more weaknesses than white. So that's what's giving white the advantage in this position.
Alireza did try to prevent that plan of the bishop going out to the side of the board. Magnus then using a different plan, trying to get his rooks pointing down on the c file. Alireza immediately challenging that area. The trade was made between the rooks, with Magnus then continuing with his knight in towards the center, putting pressure on black's rook. The rook had to move, and then Magnus actually kind of diverted his attention over to the left-hand side of the board, utilizing the fact that black's rook isn't really able to defend on that side, pressuring here down towards black's queen. The queen had to move, Magnus defending his pawns on that side. And here was an interesting moment with Alireza trying to strike back against the grip Magnus had created on black's position, and he moves his pawn in front of the king 2 steps forward, trying to challenge the white pawn and trying to open up against the white king.
Yeah, no, this was a really active move by Alireza, and we were starting to think that black was getting some counterplay here, but Magnus completely held things together. What did he move here? It was knight g4. They're starting this maneuvering. Yes, threatening the fork on h6, and black played king g7, knight e3, and eventually, very soon, white is going to push this move f5. Yes, and so kind of changing the nature of the game. So now he's trading off this e6 weakness, and he's going to play for an attack on black's king. And soon after this, actually, Alireza blunders here. It's terrible move king g8, right? Like walking into this knight g4 move and then suddenly having no real way to protect this pawn because there's forks all over the place. But it was admittedly quite hard for him to play. I mean, white did have the initiative, but this just made it easier.
So the rook cannot protect the pawn because then the knight will come in with an attack on both the king and the queen. Alireza tried using his king up the board instead to defend, but then that king got knocked back by white's pawn. Magnus took out the pawn. In addition to having a dominating position, he now has a pawn more than his opponent. And here, while Alireza was trying to create some kind of a last-ditch attack with his queen and rook on the right side, it was Magnus who suddenly came with that bishop maneuver we were talking about earlier, making that trade so that suddenly Alireza was not only being attacked by the knight on the right side, there's also a queen coming in from the left, creating all sorts of trouble. And Alireza tried getting his queen up into the attack. Magnus coming in with his rook, just denying that option. The queen had to step back. Magnus now getting his knight back into the center, and Magnus just working together with his pieces, getting ready for that final assault on Black's king. A last-ditch attempt here from Alireza. Once again, he tried to infiltrate with his queen towards the white king, but Magnus, so coolly, he just puts his rook one step forward, says, oh, you want to get your queen in here? Well, I'm controlling here, I'm controlling here, I'm controlling here, I'm controlling... There's just no way for that queen to create any sort of trouble.
Yeah, no, Magnus's conversion was very clean here. I mean, this is not too difficult. He just didn't give Alireza any counterplay. I personally really enjoyed this game for Magnus. I mean, we know the reason we're showing this to you guys is because there's a lot of suspense when Magnus is playing the guy that he says is, one of the only players that he's going to be motivated to play against in the World Championship match. I guess he said it's the only player that would motivate him. So we're motivated to watch their games and see how this matchup goes. In this game, Magnus looked like the boss.
Yeah, and with this final maneuvering of the knight, Alireza resigned the game because even though the knight was well placed on this e5 square, Magnus found out I'm going to get the queen there instead. And a possible ending to this game would have been that Magnus pushed his pawn forward. And then as the king was trying to hide in the corner, the queen would use that fantastic square in the middle, actually executing a checkmate on Black's king. So Alireza resigned the game, and that was the rapid recap of the second day of the World Rapid Championship.
And by the way, guys, tomorrow in the women's side, we got a big matchup. The reigning women's rapid champion, Humpy Conero, is going to be facing off against a red-hot Alexandra Kostyanyuk. Kostyanyuk has 1.5 points on her competition. That's huge. With 3 games left to play, just 3 games to be a 1.5 points ahead of your competition. I mean, puts you in amazing position to capture first place without too much trouble. But there is a big fight going on for second place between Humpy Conero, Polina Shuvalova, Katerina Lagno, the new Kazakh player Asel Sarigbai, and the other Kazakh player Bibisara Asobayeva. They're actually playing each other tomorrow. And the first game of the day. And their third Kazakh player also kind of climbing up there, Jansaya Abdumalik. So we have tons of interesting chess for you tomorrow. And on the open side, we're going to have Magnus Carlsen playing against Nordebek Abdusatorov, a young player who is very well known for his successful play on Chess.com's Titled Tuesdays, and has made tons of improvements in the last couple of years. Jan Nepomniachtchi is playing Alexander Grishuk. I believe these guys are friends on the Russian team. And wait, this is a matchup I really want to see. I feel like these players have a lot in common. And this is Alireza Firouzja versus Hikaru Nakamura. I mean, both of these guys really tricky, really fast, really resourceful, very kind of similar styles, I think. And so I will be looking forward to that one, Yoon.
Yeah, that sounds like the main excitement coming up tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. I hope to see you all then.
See you guys tomorrow.